When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With Twin Spires, you can place your bets with confidence. Whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with Twin Spires. And now you can share the thrill with friends using our exclusive Bet Share feature.
Welcome back to the Twin Spires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James, Scully, and Nick Tammaro filling in once again. You might as well just join the roundtable regularly.
Trying to get my seat at the table.
We're happy to have you back, and we're going to be talking Haskell Preview Day, stakes racing at Churchill Downs, and what else caught our eye from the weekend. And Nick, I'll start things off with you. On Saturday, Monmouth Park had Haskell Preview Day, where Tuscan Sky and Bright Future both won for Todd Pletcher in pretty dominant fashion. Do you feel like either of these runners could be major players in their respective divisions?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Javier Castellano made a trip down to Monmouth, and certainly he had watched some Calvin Burrell, I think, in learning that it's the quickest way around there is on the rail. He rode the rail both on Tuscan Sky and Bright Future, and Tuscan Sky really took advantage of a favorable pace scenario, given that it seemed like everybody else was committed to lining up as far as they could across the racetrack, and that enabled him to get the lead on the rail. I'll tell you, though, I was impressed with the way he kicked away in the final quarter of a mile or so, and really left horses like Domestic Product and Sea Streak in his wake in what amounted to a better effort than I expected from him. So I think I underrated this horse a little bit. I wasn't sure exactly where the barn felt he belonged when they entered him in the race on Preakness weekend that he was scratched from, I think, because of the wet track. So it was made clear that he's a horse that at least still has some upside. He ran fast early on in his 3-year-old season. So I don't see why he can't be a threat in some second half derbies. I thought this was a pretty compelling performance. Obviously, he would need to take another step forward in a race like the Haskell if he were to face the likes of, Dornock or Mage or some of these horses, not Mage, Muth, some of these horses that we've seen Mage is not participating, that we've seen of late really assert themselves as 3-year-olds, but I don't see why he can't be at least a threat.
What do you think, James?
Well, I agree with generally that was an encouraging performance by Tuscan Sky. He earned his first triple-digit of 100 Brisnet speed rating for the wins by 6 3/4 lengths. He's got something going for him, but the competition's obviously going to get more difficult. That Pegasus was a 1.16 distance. He's going to have to stretch out to 1.125, maybe 1.25 if he was to target the Travers. So, but he had something going for him in the sense that was only his second stakes attempt. He's now 3 for 4. He's eligible to keep progressing. We'll see if he can do so. As far as Bright Future now, Bright Future being a major player in the older division, I would not bet against him. And the fact is, the older male division lacks depth, and Bright Future is one of the few horses in it who has proven at the 1.25 distance, winning the Jockey Club Gold Cup last year. The thing with Bright Future is he's a 5-year-old son of Curlin. He didn't make his stakes debut till last summer. The Salvatore Mile on Saturday, that was his first race since running 6th in the Breeders' Cup Classic. He's now won 3 of his last 4 starts. It was only his 3rd stakes attempt. And I just think he's really has the chance to come into his own this season and take a huge step forward in a sense. Now, one thing about that Salvatore Mile, it wasn't a pretty performance. He clearly looked like he was in trouble on the far turn. Brett was idling in a sense. And then he came again in the stretch and finished up, powerfully to win going away by almost 2 lengths. He's a horse that's, like I said, he's already proven it around the ground. He's got the Whitney coming up in early August. He's got the Jockey Club Gold Cup in early September. He could target one or both of those races for Todd Pletcher. And like I said, the older horse division, there's not many top classic contenders out there, and fewer that have ever won at a 10 furlong distance like Bright Future has. So he has some. I like his chances moving forward. Of the two, I give him a better chance to be a major player in his respective division, Ashley.
So for me, Tuscan Sky, and I'll probably keep my commentary light because my voice is going out, but Tuscan Sky is a horse that I've had on my radar. I covered Vino Rosso as a first crop sire, and this is a son of Vino Rosso. Now, he had this huge performance at Fairgrounds in his second career start. He got a 97 Brisnet speed figure in the mud. He did only face 2 rivals that day, but that speed figure was better than Sierra Leone's speed figure later on that card. So that kind of piqued my interest back when he was a 2-year-old and got there. Actually, that wasn't when he was a 2-year-old. That was earlier this year when he was a 3-year-old. He got his first start at 3. And he had 2 career wins. Then he faced 10 rivals in the Wood Memorial, was 7th in that race, and then came back and won here. Now, I will say the knock on Tuscan Sky is he has not beaten more than 4 or 5 rivals at this point. And when he faces larger fields, we've seen him just only one time do that and finish 7th. So that's a concern for me. But when I look at the 3-year-old division, it's wide open at the moment. The older dirt male division, I feel like National Treasure, I'm looking at National Treasure as the top of that division at the moment. Surely, Bright Future certainly can contend, but I feel like I'm liking National Treasure a little bit better. And I just feel like that 3-year-old division is a little bit more wide open to me at this moment.
Yeah, the thing with National Treasure, you got even First Mission who's coming along for Brad Cox, and and some once you get past those horses, you've got who was the winner of the Saudi Arabian race, Senor Buscador.
Yeah.
Those are your 3 top contenders in the older horse division, at least right now. I know Arabian Nights coming back, but there's not a lot of depth in that division. And, this was a year where it looked like the 3-year-olds going into the Triple Crown or, could make an impact this fall in a race like the Classic. But to me, it's just wide open right now. We saw the Triple Crown, all 3 winners paid more than $20. There's really just no standouts, period, among 3-year-olds or older males. So if you're a up and coming sort, you've got a chance to keep making waves in your respective division, I think. And both horses won by open lengths, Bright Future by nearly 2 lengths and Tuscan Sky by more than 6.
Well, let's talk about a 3-year-old filly. Torpedo Anna probably is not locked up in that 3-year-old division for the fillies, but Our Pretty Woman got her first stakes win this weekend at Churchill Downs in the Monmouth Girl Overnight Stakes. And then we also had Web Slinger win the Chorleywood Overnight Stakes at Churchill Downs. So, James, what were your takeaways from these wins at Churchill?
Well, I thought it was good for Our Pretty Woman to rebound from, that disappointing 11th place effort in the Kentucky Oaks. But, I certainly didn't think this was a pretty performance. It was, I thought it was a little bit difficult to gauge. First off, the race had a real dawdling pace. And, Our Pretty Woman had led wire to wire when she won, or had led wire to wire when early in her career when she was winning, and it set the pace when she ran second in the Fairgrounds Oaks. It was good to see her show some tractability and stalk the front runners in third. But we'll see here when she gets to the end of the far turn. She's practically all in at that point to run down the speed, who basically gives way essentially after she strains for home. And I just thought that Intricate was sort of weaving in and out in the stretch and just really hasn't gone on this year at age 3. So, granted, the pace was slow, so that's going to take away from your final speed number. But seeing an 83 Brisnet speed rating for Our Pretty Woman's victory in this in the Monomoy Girl, I thought was pretty disappointing. And she just has a lot to show moving forward. One thing about the 3-year-old filly division is once you get past Torpedo Anna, there's not much depth in that division as well. So there's going to be a lot of stakes races out there that Torpedo Anna's not going to be in, that Our Pretty Woman can aim for, and she's got something going for her off of this victory. But like I said, Nick, it wasn't a very fast win. I didn't think it was a very pretty performance.
Yeah, I think this race yielded last year's Coaching Club American Oaks winner in Wet Paint, who finished second in here and then came back and won that. And I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think that it would require some pretty serious improvement from Our Pretty Woman, who, as you alluded to, it was kind of an unsightly win. A win is a win, I get it, but it wasn't earned in the most, eye-catching type of fashion. And it feels like I don't know how long it had been since I'd seen a Steve Asmussen horse ridden that hard before they kind of kicked in. It feels like all of Steve's horses have this push button acceleration that you ask them and they just start running. I understand he uses a lot of jockeys that are very good with their hands as well, so you really don't see them driving away too much, but she really did need it. Intricate did kind of get going late. I think I do agree with James's sentiment, though, that she really hasn't gone on as a 3-year-old filly, which, it's one of the unfortunate things about 2 to 3. Sometimes they don't, but she's still a filly with some talent, and I could see her finding a spot where she could make some noise. I think, what you're kind of hinting at is like Iowa Oaks, those kind of races, Indiana Oaks, secondary type of graded stakes that might not give them an opportunity to run against some of the heavy heads and back your way into a race like the Cotillion or something like that down the line. But it feels like some softer competition is probably what our Pretty Woman needs.
Yeah, I agree with you all. I mean, that Brissett speed figure for me really stood out. And I mean, our Pretty Woman had a 62 in the Kentucky Oaks and then improved to this 83 at least in this race, but certainly nothing too exciting, only facing 4 rivals as well. So I don't think she's anywhere close to Torpedo 8 at the moment, but yes, finding different stakes to stay away from her certainly can win them. And Intricate maybe as well. Could be a player in some other stakes races. And then as far as Web Slinger, we saw him get his 3rd win at Churchill Downs from 4 starts at the track. So this is really a horse for the course at Churchill Downs. Had a 105 late pace rating, got that great closing kick, and was able to beat morning line favorite Bold Act, who's now 0 for 3 in the U.S. I'm not sure what the plan's going to be with Bold Act, who since shipping over to the U.S. has not been able to get a win, has finished 3rd twice and 4th as well for Charlie Appleby. So, James, what did you think about this win for Web Slinger? I know you had him in the jury.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give him credit for, closing determinedly. He finished well to edge Segoy by a half length in the end. Yeah, and Web Slinger, he snapped a 7-race losing streak, so that's encouraging for him. It's been a while since he had actually won a race. He won back-to-back stakes last year, and had run a bunch of seconds and thirds, but hadn't won in quite some time. So it was a mile 3/8 distance as well. I guess Mark Cassidy probably plans to keep him at longer distances on the turf. He is a 4-year-old gelding, so they're not going to be going to stud. One thing I will say, though, about Web Slinger is when he ran a next second into program trading in the Hollywood Derby last December, I thought that was a very strong effort. I thought he was going to keep moving forward as 4. I thought it was a very positive sign in a sense, and that has not happened. He hasn't gone on at age 4 like I thought he would. But he is back on track now following this win, Nick. He did get up came home pretty fast to win. So I don't want to say, too much negative about him.
Yeah, he's a horse he's better than his record shows, but he's definitely not reached his potential. And, this is a horse that Mark Cassidy debuted sprinting on the turf, right? So I think distance-wise, they've not really ever known exactly what he wanted to do. I was a little concerned this was going to be too far. One thing you have to say about this, and if you followed Web Slinger's career, one thing you know about him is that he had made this sort of egregious, wide, sweeping move over and over and over, almost as if Javier Castellano was instructed to do that every single time. And God only knows how much ground he gave up in some of those races. I mean, in last year's Twilight Derby, he ended up 3rd, beaten less than a length, and covered the entire field around the turn. He did the same thing in this year's Old Forester Turf Classic, and that was also a period of time where you wanted to save as much ground as possible, which in general you want to do in turf racing to begin with, but there was an advantage to being closer to the inside on Derby weekend. So he had really been up against it. It was a very good ride by Jose Ortiz. And I think, in watching the replay the first time, I thought Web Slinger probably looked over and saw the rail and said, "What's that?" Right? Because he's used to being 6-7 pass off of it, at least around the far turn. So that worked out much better. I would imagine Mark Cassidy will keep him long and probably look at the Bowling Green and the Sword Dancer and see if maybe he can fit in there. Obviously, Charlie Appleby has approached things differently in terms of what kind of horses he's bringing over here, at least for longer term engagements. But Silver Knot is a horse that has looked very, very good in a couple of recent graded stake wins around 3 turns in this country. I assume he's going to be in those races as well later in the summer. So at least it feels like they found Web Slinger a home. it wasn't an overly compelling performance, but it was nice to see the sunshine on him a little bit, because he really has had the worst of it trip-wise on just too many occasions, in my opinion.
And I'm glad you brought up Silver Knot, because that was you had that Hollywood Derby, Program Trading, Web Slinger, Silver Knot. I mean, they're all separated by about a
Right.
length. And Program Trading's won the Old Forester, Silver Knot's won the
Elkhorn and
the Man of War. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those two have gone on, in a sense, from that race. Web Slinger has it, but you're right. He still has the potential to go on and improve in the future for Mark Casse.
And a lot of times the longer turf races get thinned out a little bit, right? Because you just have a lot of horses that don't really want to go that trip. And, our racing over here, despite having a number of graded stakes at that distance, I mean, we're more geared towards 8 to 10 furlongs anyway, right? We have that division is such a niche division that it really does feel like an outsider can come in and make noise pretty quickly.
You think maybe we could see him in the Arlington Million, or even try the Breeders' Cup turf?
No, that's very possible. In fact, $1 million does seem like a spot that he might try. I guess it would really boil down to whether Mark Casse thinks 3 turns might be what would go for it. But I know that Appleby said that Measured Time, who just won the Manhattan, will be in the $1 million. And yeah, I mean, it feels like now that he's gone 1 3/8 miles successfully, 1 1/4 miles should be well within Web Slinger's range as well.
Let's move on to what else caught our eye from the weekend. So, Nick, what about you?
So there was some good 2-year-old racing over the weekend, and we saw some field size in New York that we haven't seen in 2-year-old racing really in quite some time. I don't know if maybe some of these horses are a little bit more behind the curve and we all benefited from it, but there was a 2-year-old first-time starter named Mentee, who is a full brother of reigning Eclipse Award-winning juvenile Fierceness, who debuted at Belmont at Aqueduct on Saturday, and he was part of an entry for Todd Pletcher and Mike Rapoli. He's obviously a Mike Rapoli homebred, and he held on by the most desperate of noses over Colloquial and ran very well doing so, ran the fastest 5 furlongs we'd seen at Aqueduct in quite some time, and I believe established a track record as well. So just a huge performance from a horse who's really fast. Now, I think one of the things that's abundantly clear that really is a difference between he and his older brother Fierceness is I don't think Mentee is going to go 1 1/8 miles. I think he's kind of a runoff speed horse that wants to go short, and that's okay, right? Because at this stage of the game, you don't need to go very far. Ultimately, he might be a horse that they could train a little bit more distance into, but you're seeing in this replay, he's very quick, and he was able to get away from the field at the quarter pole very, very quickly, and I can't blame track announcer Chris Griffin for thinking this thing was done and dusted at the 8th pole, because it looks like he's the only one running and everybody else is kind of running in place. But I have to say, this late effort from Colloquial, which isn't a matter of Mentee tiring, in my opinion. This is Colloquial really lengthening stride and really showing that he's a horse with some quality as well. I mean, he is rolling right now, ends up losing the race on a head bob, but those two feel like a couple of really promising juveniles to me, and let's hope we continue to see some strong 2-year-old performances, because nothing is more fun than heading into the new year with Derby aspirations for a number of horses, and it feels like we could be headed that way.
Yeah, well, Colloquial is from the first crop of Vekoma. Vekoma obviously have a huge weekend. And if you look at that head on, I mean, he just sort of blows the brake. He comes out sideways, Colloquial does. He gets behind horses on the inside, and he's sort of tossing his head a little bit. So he's a little bit rank. Even watching the replay, I mean, he gets to the end of the far turn. It looks like there's a chance he could be third, or at that point. And I love the way he leveled off. You're right. I mean, he really just found his best stride there once he straightened for home. Looks like a colt with the future for George Weaver. And that's the kind of no second that Weaver might go straight to these Saratoga Stakes off of and not mess around with running in a maiden race because that horse looks to have a future. But I do want to mention 2019 Bluegrass winner, 2020 Met Mile winner, Vekoma. He won 6 to 8 starts. He's the son of Candy Ride. He stands at Spendthrift Farm. Candy Ride, son of sire of Gunrunner, Twirling Candy, a bunch of young stallions out there. Vekoma, through last Sunday, he had won with 4 of his first 5 starters. Now, those wins had come at Delaware Park, Gulfstream Park, Horseshoe Indianapolis, and Woodbine. And last Friday at Churchill Downs, they ran 3 5-furlong maiden special weight races. Vekoma had a runner in all 3 races, and he had 2 wins and a second. And then he had that Colloquial. So he's got 6 wins and 2 seconds from his first 10 starters. Hottest freshman sire in the world. His horses are runners. And I want to mention Viggy Dial from Friday. this filly flashed forward at the start for Steve Asmussen and really just looked the part, I thought, winning this very comfortably. What I really like is you can just see her get out to an easy lead, doing it all on her own. When she gets asked a little bit in the stretch, she just continues to draw off and win in a real professional manner. Absolutely, this is a filly to watch for in this Saratoga Stakes from Churchill Downs. This is the best looking 2-year-old filly I've seen, in Kentucky this year. Well, let me just say, at Churchill Downs this spring meet, that Ward might have had a couple in Keeneland, but Biggie Doll looks like a real filly with the future, and she got a 91 Brisnet speed rating. That was like that's in par with all the best 2-year-old numbers we've seen so far at early point in the summer, and I just want to point out Vekoma. I mean, just he stood for $15,000. He was like one thing that had been brought up in regards to him a little bit this year was with Sierra Leone, because Sierra Leone paddles when he runs. Vekoma did the same thing when he ran. It has had no impact upon him as a stud, and heck, he was much more consistent than Sierra Leone ever was, winning 6 of 8 starts. So just want to point out the hot start that Vekoma's had to stud.
I'll definitely be betting his progeny with that win rate. That's just, I don't see that. I can't remember the last time I've ever seen that win rate. That's crazy. Well, I'll take it to New York, where Chad Brown, for my what else, Chad Brown, trainee Aseed, got her first stakes victory on Saturday in the Better Roses. Now, I actually was trying to win with her stablemate, Cheetah Booty. Didn't work out for me. I should have known, because Irad Ortiz Jr. was aboard Aseed, and Irad Ortiz Jr. had already won this race 3 times in the last decade, and Chad Brown now has 4 wins in this race since 2018, and went back-to-back, because he won with Irad Ortiz Jr. and won with Goodnight Olive last year in the Bed of Roses. But Aseed had won on debut and then tried stretching out in the Acorn, didn't do too well against Graded Stakes Company, even tried Turf in the Music City, and then in the last 3 starts now has a 3-win streak trying sprint distances on the dirt. So seems like Chad Brown figured it out and had a really good weekend overall. He also got wins in the Eatontown Stakes with tax implications, and then won the Monmouth Stakes as well, a grade 3 in a dead heat with Running Bee, and Shug McGahee's Fort Washington also came in with that dead heat. So, it's no surprise Chad Brown had a good weekend in New York, I would say, but yeah, very dominant, and good to see Aseed finally get that stakes win, because, pretty good filly here, but just couldn't quite figure out the right distance for a while. So we'll see what happens in the sprint division with her. What do y'all think?
Talented horse, and she certainly had a good trip, got a great ride from Irad. I liked just Catherine, who I thought ran extremely well. Didn't break that great. She's the 5 here, coming up a little bit short on the cutback in distance. But yeah, good effort by Aseed. I would imagine that she'll now probably take on some of the heavy heads in this division, like Vava and Alva Star. Vava, who's scheduled to run at Churchill on Saturday, very exciting, coming back off her pair of grade 1s in the Madison and the Derby City Distaff. So it's a real talent-rich division right now, no doubt.
Yeah, it's almost like after that Derby City Distaff, it's a little bit of a lull until we get to Saratoga. So Alva Star ran in a $100,000 stake at Delaware, and I saw that. Yeah, we got Baba in the Grade 3 Chicago this Saturday at Churchill, but that was a tough beat too. Just Catherine, she was a prize for you. Oh man.
Yeah, it would have been nice, right? It was just a little unfortunate, but you know what? Some days chicken, some days feathers.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick before we go, Nick, our producer wants me to ask you about Dallas, which obviously they just lost to the Celtics. But what are your thoughts? Because you're a Houston guy, so.
That's true.
I'm glad that the Mavericks were able to finally do something to get me to root for the Celtics. I think the only way that I could have rooted for the Celtics was them playing for Dallas. So it was Jason Tatum all the way in my house. I'm amazed at the number of people on social media that are Houstonians that were like, well, we'll root for Dallas because we're both in Texas. Like, that is blasphemy. No rooting for Dallas if you're a self-respecting Houstonian. So tough, close but no cigar. Maybe next year.
I'm guessing you're the same way with the NFL too.
Oh, absolutely. I would root for some
Good
obnoxious
time to be a
for
Houston
the
fan in
Cowboys.
the
Yeah.
NFL.
It's an exciting time to be a Texans fan, no doubt about it. I hope CJ Stroud does as much good playing as he's done talking in the offseason, but he's been very busy.
Well,
So
Harry got
hopefully,
stuff on Diggs too, so
yeah,
Yeah. That's
it's
edge
I mean, it's
rusher.
amazing how quick. Yeah,
Yeah.
Daniil Hunter. They
Yeah.
went from being kind of a joke to being a real contender in a very short period of time. So fingers
yeah.
crossed. Knock on wood. We've seen this happen before in Houston football, and something's happened.
D'Amico Ryan should have gotten Coach of the Year. That's all I got to say. But
Totally agree.
that's too much football talk for the Racing Roundtable. So that's all the time we have today for the Roundtable. We'll be back next Tuesday. Thank you again, Nick, for filling in. And we'll be back on Thursday, too, with our best bets and fades on the Twin Spires jury.